Hi, it's Lisa from A Simple Season. Today I'm going to show you some simple ways that you can store your dry goods like your oats, pasta, rice, powdered milk, dry beans, so that they last well past the best by date and stay fresh longer. So let's get started. Today I'm going to show you how we can package up our dry goods so that they can last a long time. And typically when we buy our dry goods, they come in bags like this, and they're not really very sturdy, and you know, we open them up and then what do? We kind of curl them over like this and, you know, pin them shut, or the best we can, but it does leave the product susceptible to air and pantry bugs or anything like that. So we want to avoid that, and we want to make our dry goods stay as fresh as possible for as long as possible. What I do is I have a couple of different methods that I use to keep these staying nice and fresh. The first thing I want to show you are these. These are just a couple of juice containers. I think they had apple juice or cranberry juice in them. They're just made out of like a nice sturdy plastic. And what I do with these is I wash them out really well. And I put in just a little tiny splash of bleach in with the soap and the water that I'm using so that it gets all the smells out. And then I leave them out to dry. These do take a long time to dry, like probably 3 or 4 days for them to be completely dry with no water or moisture in there whatsoever, because everything that we use here needs to be completely dry before you can use it for storing dry goods. And these lids are really good because they've got that little rubber gasket on the inside, and that's what's really going to seal these up really nice and tight and make your dry goods last longer. And the rule of thumb I use for these is if I have something stored in there, I fill it right to the top so that there's very little air in there, or almost no air, and I pack it down like this. I fill it and I pack it down so that the product goes down as much as possible, and I can fill it right up to the top. Because air is your enemy with these. You want to keep these as full as possible and as little air in there as possible. And these will extend your best by date by at least a year, maybe 2, just by storing it like this. And this one here is just a plastic 2-liter soda bottle. So again, same thing, just wash it out really well, leave it out to dry. It's got that nice rubber gasket on the top, because if this kept a drink fizzy, it's got to be sealed really well. So these are really great to use, super inexpensive to get. You can even ask your friends, you know, if they've got any that they're heading out to recycle and they're not using them. You can certainly take these and store, like I've got rice in this one. You can store these for a long time. And if you put rice in there, I would say you're probably good for 5 or 6 years at least, with the top on nice and tight. And don't forget to overlook unconventional containers. This was a container that our cat treats came in, and I was recycling these before. I was just getting rid of them, and I started looking at them, and I noticed on the bottom it had the PETE sign on them, which is a food grade plastic. And so I started washing these out really well and drying them out and putting a little bit of bleach in there to disinfect and using them for food storage, and they've worked out really well. What I do here with these, because these lids do not have that rubber gasket here on the top, is I just seal it up with some saran wrap or some press and seal to just give it that extra layer of protection, and then put the lid on nice and tight. Make sure the product is filled as close to the top as possible. And these have been fantastic. And we have our good old canning jar here, the old standby with the nice lid. You put that on nice and tight, pack your product down, whether it's beans or flour or rice or any kind of dry good, oats, whatever you have, in a canning jar. This keeps stuff really fresh. And again, you can save it for well beyond the date. I would say at least 1 or 2 years past the date if it's just locked up tight in a canning jar. I've also got this big bag of potatoes here, and I'll show you how I store these to make them last longer. The thing with potatoes is they need ventilation. So I store mine in a basket like this because the holes on the side of the basket just help the airflow and just helps keep them fresher longer. So what I do is I'll just take a few sheets of newspaper and line the bottom like this because newspaper is really good for absorbing moisture. And then I just take an old tea towel and put that in the bottom as well. And the other thing with potatoes is you definitely want to take them out of the plastic bag that they come in. You don't want to store potatoes in the plastic bag because the plastic bag does retain a lot of moisture and it will make the potatoes go bad a lot more quickly. So we're just going to take them out and put them in the basket, and then you just need to store it in preferably a cool, dry, dark place. If you have a room in a basement or if you've just got a cupboard in your kitchen that's nice and dark, just don't leave them out in the open like I used to do. So ever since I started using this method years ago, my potatoes have lasted a lot longer and you can keep them for months, stored just like this. Here I have some potatoes that I stored a few months ago and they're starting to chit or they're starting to sprout. So these you can save and just put in your garden. So if you don't ever need to buy seed potatoes, you can just use the potatoes that you've bought in the past and just plant them in tubs or your garden and grow new potatoes. Thanks so much for joining in with me today. I'm gonna take these chitting potatoes and put them in my garden right now, and we'll see you next time.